Busy men who implement these 3 steps will start shedding body fat within days. The problem is most busy men over 30 are stuck doing the wrong diets and training plans, making them feel starved and exhausted after a stressful day at the office. But in the past 8 years of coaching men, the best strategy that always sheds belly fat to get them lean with more muscle comes down to the simplest and most sustainable approach. Ultimately, there's 3 core pillars to keep it really simple. I'm going to talk about nutrition, then we're going to talk about training, and I'll also talk about progress, results, and ultimately the what I call the MED approach, minimum effective dose. So it's getting the most results and progress, investing the least amount of time versus, going out maximum, getting results, but not being able to sustain. Like when it comes to nutrition and dieting, most people think if they just go from 6 slices to 3, it's all going to be good. But the fact is, if we're still eating a whole pizza, then the calories are going in, right? The question is, well, what happens if we do eat or overeat, let's say pizza, for example. Now, 1 slice of pizza could be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Now, a normal dinner for the majority of people could range anywhere from 450 to 800 calories, depending on the fat content, the carb content. And you'd also be surprised if you do have like a 350 gram tomahawk or ribeye steak, that could also be 700 to 800 calories just in that. However, let's assume we ate a whole pizza just because we were in the mood for it, like I was here. How do we go about fixing that? It's actually pretty simple. And what it comes down to is just knowing your budget. So let's assume if I'm budgeting 2,000 calories per day, then the next day I end up having 2,900. So I over budget by 900 calories. The easiest thing to do is to shave it off the next day. I call this calorie rebalancing. Now that can be a little extreme, like dropping to 1,100 calories the next day. So you might want to think about, well, if I did go over, how can I compensate the next day or maybe the next 2 or 3 days to spread it out a bit more and make it a bit more realistic and tolerable? And here's a couple of ways that can do that. So, if you had a small plate of pasta, it might be 300 calories. If you had a slightly bigger one or double the size, it would be 600. If you had a massive plate, it would be 920, right? But you can see just by trimming the portions, you can save 200, 300, 400 calories pretty easily just in one meal for the day. Then we have beverages, and often a lot of beverages are loaded with calories without us knowing, particularly like the Frappuccino, Mocha Latte, Deluxe Whipped Cream, Chocolate Sprinkle, whatever bomb, calorie bomb, those things are just full of them, where we could simply have a black coffee for 5 calories and save 295 calories that we didn't need from liquids that don't really fill us up, that don't keep us satisfied for hours, and most likely going to spike our energy, which is going to crash within a couple of hours afterwards. Another popular option is, again, really healthy, avocado and eggs on toast. However, loaded with calories if you're trying to save them. So you could just have scrambled eggs and shave 200 plus calories off there. So if you count all that up, there's about 300 calories saved from having a smaller plate of pasta, another 295, call it 300 coffee, 200 there. So you can easily save 500, 600, 700 calories in one day just by trimming them strategically and not actually missing out on foods that are tasty, that don't look like your typical diet, salad, boring foods, if you have a calorie budget. I just want to touch on keto, not to, pinpoint it because there's many diets that could go into this bucket, but there is still this belief that if you just don't eat carbs and only eat fat and protein, that there's some magical things going to happen or the body fat will just melt away like butter in a hot pan. But if you look at the calories and if you look at the studies that compared high carb to high fat, low carb diets, as long as the calories are equated, meaning they're equal, then both groups in the study lost the same equivalent amount of weight in the same amount of time. And I can show you why. So here's a few high fat, typical kind of keto foods. Avocado is 240 calories. Now, whole avocado, I would say that's, could be satiating, but it's not a lot of food when you think about it. Like, say an orange would be a lot more volume of food and it's less than half the calories. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. Just a little tablespoon of coconut oil is 117 calories. 2 thin slices of bacon, 80 calories, and a slice of cheese, 113. So if we think about food volume, so put aside health and put aside any magical effects that people think keto or any other diet may have, it's not a lot of food, but it is a lot of calories. Now, if we compare that to foods that are rich in carbs, well, a banana, which is quite filling, is only 105 calories. And potatoes, believe it or not, ranked highest on a satiety study that was done in Sydney University a few decades ago. Potatoes is one of the most satiating and filling foods, and it's not even that high in calories, like 200 grams of potato. It doesn't sound like a lot, it's actually a lot. You think about a normal chip packet, like crisps or chips. Some of them are about 40 grams, but you're mostly eating oil. But if you actually eat just potato, like baked potato, you can have significantly more food volume for a very low amount of calories. Something else I want to touch on as well is travel. So travel can be an issue only if you don't really account for things and keep an eye on what you're doing. So obviously 100 calories in Sydney, going to be 100 calories in the Gold Coast, Hawaii, USA, wherever. It's always going to be the same. But something that's really easy to do is something that we're a bit helping Ray with. So he travels a lot. Like it's painful the amount of travel he does, but he loves it. He travels almost every single week. He lives in the US, so he really had to get creative with what he does for his nutrition, because it's very easy to blow out his calories with like lunches with clients, dinners with business partners and property people, investors, whatever. It's like every week he's doing this stuff, so we had to really dial in a way to keep on track. One thing was the calorie budgeting and the rebalancing that I talked about, but another thing that not a lot of people talk about and do is planning out your nutrition, or like calorie planning. So one thing that helps is just looking up the area that you might be going to. So let's say we're going to Noosa in Queensland. We can look up all the restaurants in Noosa, all the ones that we might actually be going to or have previously booked, and pull up the menu and just get an idea on, okay, what options do we have to eat here? It could be the hotel, it could be a cafe, it could be whatever's local. And that way you can start to plan when, okay, well, I'm having dinner on Saturday night, and I'm probably going to, have some sides, have this, have that. So I'll budget 1,200 calories, which means my breakfast, I might not even eat breakfast on that day to save the calories for the dinner. And for lunch, I'll just have a high protein option that is lower in carbs and moderate to low fats, so that you're saving that for the dinner. So this is one simple strategy that I do and that I kind of do with my clients as well to help them stay on track. So fasting, I love parts of fasting, and other parts of it I think are just overblown. So I'm going to talk about fasting, but I don't want to come at fasting from this angle of, it cures cancer and autophagy and automatically builds muscle when you're in this. I come at it from a point of view of convenience and mental clarity and efficiency throughout the day. So everyone should know what fasting is, but the reality is we fast anyway from dinner to breakfast. That's why breakfast is called break fast. So you don't have to starve yourself to be fasting, because we normally eat dinner around, if you've got kids, you might eat dinner earlier, because typically with my clients, their kids want to eat around about 5:30, 6 o'clock latest. And then I find that that's when my clients will eat after they do. So if you're eating at, say, 6:30-ish, you're probably not going to be eating breakfast at 6:30 a.m. It might be like 7 or 7:30 or 8. That's a fasting period. So naturally, we already do fast. But where it's become popular is with intermittent fasting. So where we're having 2 bigger meals per day, or even 2 bigger meals and maybe a smaller snack in between in a shorter window. This is what I do pretty much every day, and I only do it because I just don't feel like eating in the morning. I just don't feel like it. I couldn't be bothered. I want to get up, go for a walk, have a coffee, sit down and work, and not be like slowing myself down, eating food, and then feeling a little bit kind of mentally sluggish or satiated after eating that meal. Like I want to get into work and get it done, and then eat when I start to feel hungry, which is somewhere around 11:30 a.m., depending on how many coffees I've had. So coffee is a good hunger suppressant as well. But again, it depends on what suits you. There is OMAD, 1 meal a day. If you're going to do that, it's going to be really hard to hit your protein goal. And that would be the biggest downfall of fasting is hitting your protein target, because if you're having 2 meals, then you're going to need gigantic protein servings in both of those meals to hit an optimal amount of protein. If you're having 1 meal a day, even if you ate like half a kilo of meat, which is 1 pound of meat, your body isn't going to utilize all of that. I've seen a number of studies that have showed our body only utilizes somewhere between 50 to 60 grams of protein in 1 meal, which means anything beyond that doesn't have any muscular benefit. It does have a satiety benefit. Like if you're doing carnivore and you have half a kilo of meat, probably going to fill you up for hours, and there's no carbs there. So you might find that you do have a bit more energy. You don't have this carb spike and crash. However, there's no extra muscle protein benefit from having more than 60 grams of protein in 1 meal, which is why it's good to spread it out. So I'm going to touch on snacks. So it's very easy for a snack to turn into a snacksident, meaning you could have a little jar of nuts, and people always tell me all the time, oh, nuts are healthy. I love snacking on nuts. And yeah, that's cool. But are you looking at the calories? Probably not. 80 grams is 500 calories. Now, if we can compare that to a banana, more weight, more food for like less than a fifth of the calories of nuts. Same with berries, even less again, like almost a tenth of the nuts for more weight. That'll be about half a punnet. And a protein yogurt, much less calories for double the weight of nuts. So I'm not here saying fat is bad, but I'm not the biggest fan of a high fat diet from a satiety point of view because it just chews up so many calories and it's not filling. Doesn't mean don't eat fat. It just means be aware of it and be aware of hidden fats. A lot of hidden fats in meats, a lot of hidden fats in stuff like granola and acai bowls, poke bowls, salads, a lot of hidden fats, cheeses, oils, what else? Like stuff that it could be cooked in oil without you realizing, like baked vegetables have oil on them typically, otherwise they dry out. A lot of meats are cooked in oil, otherwise, like if you cook chicken breast without oil on it, it's going to be quite dry. Just be mindful, just track it, keep it as part of your budget. Another topic is alcohol. If you drink alcohol, that's okay. If you don't, good for you. I don't really mind if people drink alcohol, but what matters is if you're aware of it. So glass of wine, 145, not too bad. Beer or Corona, 148. There is low carb beers, like I think it's called a pure blonde or something. There's also the super dry, so yeah, 100 calories. But here's where it gets a little bit exciting. So mojitos, cocktails, 240. I think that's a lemon lime bitters, 150. Bourbon and Coke, 250. But if you had it with Coke Zero or the sugar-free one, then you just count the bourbon calories, which is like 90. The leaner side of drinks is your lemon, your lime vodka sodas, and then like shots like whiskey on the rocks, scotch on the rocks, 97, right? So calorie wise, alcohol is not too bad. It's just when you have a lot of it and you don't account for it. And what blows it up is typically the hidden sugar. It's not really hidden, you can taste it. But if you're having a cocktail, there's going to be a lot of sugar. If you're having like Coca-Cola, lemonade, like Sprite, any of those high sugar drinks, that's going to blow up the calories. So better to stick to the 0 calorie options if you can. And they're not naturally sweetened, but artificially sweetened versions. Or you can have your spirits on the rocks. It's a clean way to do it. So yeah, keeping in mind, it's really the sugar that causes the issue with alcohol. And I know with beers, like your IPAs, and I think it's just IPAs that they can be quite high, like 200 to 250 calories for a standard bottle of some kind of IPA. It's really important to factor in the effect that alcohol has on our sleep. Guaranteed, no way around it. If you drink alcohol close to bed, it is going to sabotage your deep sleep. It is going to keep your body temperature up, your heart rate up, and that will trash your sleep. There is no way around it. This is particularly bad for people who just like to, like I had a few clients in the past who have had, I just like to have a glass of wine with the missus after dinner and it's like 8 o'clock. I'm like, dude, you go to bed at 9, that's going to trash your sleep. And it does. You see it pop up on the sleep score the next day versus the days they don't drink. Even just one drink too close to bed will impact your sleep. So if you are going to drink, try to keep it as far away from bedtime as possible. Keep it moderate, keep it in your budget, and also don't forget to rehydrate. One of the biggest problems with alcohol is that it dehydrates us. And then we go to bed dehydrated, we wake up severely dehydrated, and that's why we feel hungover. It's because the body's in this state of massive dehydration. So drinking water in between, or particularly before you go to bed, if you have been drinking, is a good idea to help reduce the effects of any kind of hangover effects. One thing I want to talk about is I had a client once who said to me proudly that, it was their kid's birthday on the weekend and there was a lot of cakes and lollies, but they were really happy because they didn't have any cake, they didn't have any lollies, and they were really proud of it. And as you would be, because, it can be difficult to do that when you're surrounded by cake, ice cream, chocolate, lollies, crisp, whatever. But there's one thing that I think is long-term detrimental of this kind of behavior is particularly when there's family and there's kids involved, the impact that may have on them, seeing dad not enjoy any, unhealthy food because he's on a special diet, that's cool in the short term, but what impacts that having psychologically long term? And what are we demonstrating and and what habits are we reinforcing in ourselves, let alone what are we demonstrating and showing to the people around us, whether it's the kids, missus, whoever. Now, if I could figure out how to do this, I'd probably be richer than Bezos, but I do want to talk about exercise. And a big thing that I see for people who haven't been doing a lot of exercise is going from like 0 to 100 way too quick. They're basically overtraining. Like, even though overtraining isn't really a thing, it's more about under recovering. But I see a lot of guys putting in a lot of effort for such a little reward. Like, I'm kind of against doing daily workouts unless you genuinely love it, unless it's something that you enjoy doing and it brings a lot of joy to your life. That's cool. But I would say don't do daily workouts. Don't even do 5 workouts again, unless it's a habit and something you love. 4 workouts can also be difficult because if you need to work out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you've only got 1 rest day in between, and then you've got the weekend. So you'd have to, if you miss one of those workouts, now that has to go to the weekend. If you miss 2, now you've got to work out on Saturday, Sunday, which now backs up to Monday, which gives you no rest break. So 4 workouts a week is, for most people, a bit technical and complicated with scheduling if you can't religiously stick to them. The sweet spot is 3 workouts a week. And you can achieve a lot with 3 workouts a week, particularly doing a full body approach. So hitting a little bit of everything on Monday, then you have 48 hours rest, because let's say you train at 2 p.m. on Monday, and you've got 24 hours to Tuesday, 24 hours to Wednesday. Hit it again, stimulate the body, 48 hours rest, hit it again. And then you've got a full weekend to recover and then hit it fresh again on Monday. So that's worked really well for me. Like, when I went from the 5 workout bro split, like chest Monday, arms Tuesday, legs Wednesday, back Thursday, shoulders and abs and calves on Friday. When I stopped doing that and I went to 3 workouts, full body approach, within like 2 to 3 months, I hit records on strength and everything. And I was seeing my shape change. That's because it's a high frequency, meaning you're hitting your body parts 3 times a week, but you're doing it at a lesser volume. So you're not absolutely destroyed and like limping around, because you're just giving it enough of a dose for the body to like rapidly recover for 2 days. And then you're hitting it again. So it's a bit like if you want to get good at tennis or soccer, you don't go play golf and then table tennis, some other sport. You want to play soccer 3 times a week and make sure you're recovering in between. In the topic of workouts is body composition and also body shape and muscle fibers. So if we look at this guy on the left, he is definitely healthy. I wouldn't argue that he's unhealthy. Probably healthier than 98% of the whole human race. And no doubt he could outrun all of us all day. But there is a significant difference in his body composition. And if we compare that to a sprinter, again, both extremely healthy blokes. However, the guy on the right has a significant difference in his physique, and that is his muscle mass. So the guy on the left would be more dominant in what's called slow twitch muscle fibers. So slow twitch muscle fibers are more active for aerobic, longer endurance exercise that is more like aerobically demanding and less intense. Whereas, say, sprinting, lifting weights, fast, kind of like plyometric power driven stuff hits the fast twitch fibers. So this is where, the range of 1 rep to maybe 30 reps, depending on how heavy the weight is. So the more intense, shorter span, but we can only probably really push all out for like a minute to maximum a minute and a half. That is going to build more fast twitch fibers. And the reason this is important is because you can do all the cardio in the world, but you're still going to have a lower muscle mass compared to someone who does more intense exercise and more resistance training. And this can become a problem long term, because if the endurance guy, if he just decides to stop running, if he says, I'm sick of running endurance, I don't want to do it anymore, and tomorrow he stops, within like 2 weeks, he's just going to be gaining fat, more fat, more fat, more fat, unless he significantly drops his diet down to match the massive drop in energy output. So if we assume he's burning 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, doing 3 to 4 hour marathon runs, and he just stops, now he's going to go all the way down to like 16 to 1,800 calorie burn per day. And if he's still eating 3,000 plus calories, all that is going to turn to body fat. The benefit with having more muscle is it does increase our BMR, not by a huge amount, but having more muscle mass does stop body fat from turning to visceral fat. So an example of this is with sumo wrestlers. A lot of sumo wrestlers, when they retire, have a huge risk of metabolic disease like diabetes, heart disease, and everything within that kind of family of diseases. But up until that point, even though they're like considered the fattest athletes in the world, metabolically they're actually pretty healthy because their muscle mass is really high to their visceral fat ratio. You know, they might be 350 pounds, but they have a very low percentage of visceral fat, which is the fat around our organs and our heart that is metabolically harmful. Theirs is very low. But when they stop working out for 6 hours a day in their sumo dens or wherever they train, and they keep eating the 6,000 plus calories per day, a lot of that body fat now gets stored viscerally, and this where they have all these issues with their health. Unless they rapidly change their lifestyle, drop the calories down, they can shrink and become healthy again. So to show you what I mean, here's a cross-sectional image of thighs. It's not sliced ham, so don't start licking your lips and getting hungry. So this is a 66-year-old male, and the age is the same. Their body weight is only 2 kilos difference, which is insignificant. Their fat mass is dramatically different by, is that 23 kilos? And you can see on the left, there's just a lot more white, which is the body fat, not just around the muscle, but also in between. So it's a bit like when we eat like a Wagyu steak, there's a lot more fat kind of riddled throughout the steak versus say like a rump where it's a lot leaner. There's a lot less fat. Well, depending as long as it's not a Wagyu rump, but your standard like lean rump versus a Wagyu Scotch fillet is going to have different like fat content. So the fat mass is dramatically different by 23 kilos. And the fat-free mass is also significantly different. So if we deduct the 13 kilos of like your bones and your organs, tendons, ligaments, all the stuff that, you know, isn't muscle off the 36 kilos here, then this person on the right-hand side has 23 kilos more muscle as well as significantly less fat. That's why they're very much the same body weight. So this is body recomposition where fat can drop and is replaced by muscle. And there's a big clue here, which comes down to activity. So person on the left, average steps, 3,000, which is practically nothing. It's like waking up, going to the bathroom, walking around the house, making lunch, going out to get the mail, maybe walk to your car, walk back inside. Like anyone can get 3,000 unless, you know, you're absolutely sick in bed and you're laying down all day. Person on the right, 12,000 steps. That doesn't mean that steps would build 20 kilos of muscle because it wouldn't, but it's a good clue that if we just move more, then the chances are our legs are going to have more muscle and more strength long term. And to give you an idea on like calorie burn, so 1,000 steps is 30 to 50 calories. It's not a lot, but it adds up over the day. So if you're only getting 5,000 steps and tomorrow you get 10,000, well, it's an extra potential 250 calories, which is almost a pretty decent sized meal worth of calorie burn. And ultimately, we do have our BMR, which is the calories we burn just by being awake and alive. And for most guys, that can be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000, just depending on size. So for me, I'm a smaller guy. I'm only 71 kilos. And I'm quite lean. So it doesn't take a lot of energy for me to move around. And my body doesn't have to work very hard just to be alive. So my calorie burn is quite low compared to somebody else. Like, not to pick on Nick, but if Nick and I just laid down on the ground all day, he's going to burn more calories than me because he's taller, he's broader, and he's boned. Everything. He's just a bigger human naturally, right? So
And
he's
because
got
you've
an
been ranting
advantage.
about something and talking all day too.
What's that?
Because he'd be ranting and talking about something all day as well.
Yeah, I never just lay there and say nothing.
He wouldn't shut up.
Nah,
He'd be burning 500 calories just in his jaw muscles.
I
yeah.
know.
Yeah. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So, everyone is different. And when they say like fast metabolism, slow metabolism, it's relative to you, not to everybody else. So a couple of other things to keep in mind. An hour of cycling could be 470 to 700 calories, depending on how fast you're going. A weight workout could be 250 to 500. A power walk, which is my favorite, is 220 to 400. The reason why I love walking is because it's low intensity. It doesn't make me hungry. If you go out and do an hour of cycling, an hour of running, or even an hour workout, chances are you're going to be much hungrier because you've pushed yourself, you've burnt more energy. Whereas walking, you can still burn calories, but it is such a low intense state that it doesn't like spike your hunger levels, or at least not for me. And then running burns a lot too. So I know for me, if I go surfing for an hour, when I get back, like if there's food in front of me, I'm gonna eat it. I'm starving. But if I go for an hour walk, I feel okay, provided it's not like 35 degrees and I'm sweating my ass off. Yeah, so more burn typically means more hunger. It's a catch-22 of like, well, I can burn more calories, more fat if I just go and do more. But if you do more and more and more, you're going to be more hungry. So you got to be ready to embrace feeling hungry. And feeling hungry is not a bad thing. It's typically a sign that you're in a deficit. So if you were in a deficit burning body fat and you were never hungry, I'd be surprised that you're actually in a deficit. Like maybe not initially, but after a few weeks you might be. Lloyd, good question. Do you exercise fasted or is this detrimental? As far as I know, it's not detrimental unless you are in a severe deficit. So it's a guy who wrote a book called Outlive. So he's spoken about this a lot, and he's changed his mind on long-term fasting because he would do, I think, 10-day fasts every quarter or every 6 months. And as a result, he would lose 3 to 5 kilos of muscle, and then he would have to rebuild it over the next 6 months to only lose it again. So he stopped doing these extended long duration fasts because if you're not eating at all and then you're training, the body is going to break down fat and muscle because muscle is energy, fat is energy. So the preferred energy source for our body is glycogen, which is glucose, which comes from sugar, which comes from carbs stored in the muscle. If we don't use all that glycogen, it eventually turns into body fat, which is like storage, almost like we're hoarding energy in body fat, which will later be used up when it's needed. So yeah, it depends. Like some people, if you train in the morning and you love training in the morning, you might not want to eat first thing because it might make you feel weird or a bit nauseous in the gym. However, I have clients who need to eat before they train in the morning, otherwise they feel a bit lightheaded. Myself, I can't train unless I've had at least one solid meal. It depends on you. If you prefer to train fasted, train fasted. If you prefer to eat before, eat before. It's a preference thing. It doesn't really matter for for you to have an effective workout. Just do what works best. But to build muscle though, you need to be progressively training more and more, which we will cover soon. How are we for time, by the way, Jacob?
Yeah, mate, you're right. You're right. Folks can drop off if they need to, but you're right. Do go through your slides.
I just wanted to bring this up because often I hear people say that, I'm too old to lift weights. I don't want to hurt myself, insert any other excuse. But I stumbled across this lady in her story about a year ago. And when she turned 70, for some reason, she just started getting into workouts. I think it was her daughter or something was into it. And at like 75, she's like squatting her body weight and deadlifting her body weight. And you can see like her shoulders and arm definition. Like for it's pretty impressive to see a lady in her mid 70s lifting her own body weight without injuring herself. So yeah, if she can do it, you can do it too. In terms of workouts, they don't have to be complicated. You don't even need a gym to get an effective workout. And the reason I say that is because when Randall and I started working together, just over 260 pounds, and he started off just with dumbbells at home in his office. He had like a little corner with all his gear. And when he maxed out the dumbbells, then we got bands, which added more resistance and enabled him to get stronger. Then eventually we added a bench. We maxed that out even more. And then he got heavier dumbbells. And then about 6 to 12 months later, he got a chin-up bar because he lost like 100 pounds and now he was light enough to start doing chin-ups. And now he's at a point where he's doing chin-ups with the dumbbells between his legs, all at home. He hasn't been to the gym once. So don't feel like you need to join a gym or go above and beyond. Like you can literally start this with dumbbells at home, an affordable bench off Amazon, and a couple of bands. And there's like so many options. Like you won't run out of things to do at home. Yeah, band and bodyweight workouts as well for traveling is a good idea. So if there is no gym at a hotel or resort that you're staying at, you can easily just slide in some bands into your luggage and still get an effective workout in using bands, because the bands kind of mimic the resistance that you would have from weights anyway. So like worst case, you can just maintain while you're away. And then when you come back, just pick up and keep pushing. But if you do nothing on a holiday, like a week is okay. Like if you've been training hard for like 2 to 3 months and you take a week off, no problem. Call it a deload and like a full recovery period, provided you get straight back into it. But if you take more than a week off and you haven't been training intensely, then the chances are you're going to lose strength, lose fitness, lose muscle. Then when you come back, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to catch up to where you were. So at minimum, you want to be maintaining if you're away from your normal workouts. And this leads me to biofeedback and tracking. So what really makes my program, what I do, and clients' results effective is data, biofeedback. So a combination of getting data from a fitness tracker, whether it's a watch, Fitbit, Garmin, Whoop, any brand, doesn't matter, or an Oura Ring, which is just a minimal version, which is a kind of low fuss version, which I prefer. They work really well. If you combine all that data, you can keep an eye on what you're burning, the steps you're doing, the quality of your sleep, stress levels, your heart rate, your resting heart rate. It's like plugging your body into QuickBooks or Xero, and then you can see everything going on. And that gives you back control over your body and is going to guide you long-term on what you should be doing, what goals you should be setting, and why you might be hitting plateaus. You might be like, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm having salads, haven't had alcohol for 2 months and haven't been eating chocolates, haven't been eating the kids' leftovers, but I'm still not losing weight. And then you look at your fitness data and realize that you've been eating the same amount of food you've been burning. So you haven't even been in a deficit. You wouldn't know that if you didn't track the biofeedback data. Another really important metric or metrics is your blood results. And it's kind of shocking how many guys don't get blood work done often. And particularly if we're over 30, like every year we should be getting our blood work done, because it's the best precursor to any kind of long-term disease and even potentially cancers as well. They're going to be picked up in the blood. And it's also important to look at our like hormone profiles, look at our testosterone, look at our vitamin and mineral levels, because a lot of like illnesses or ailments or potential disease that we could develop long-term start at a deficiency that could have been picked up 5 to 10 years ago. So I've learned this the hard way, being diagnosed celiac with the celiac disease when I was 23. And that meant for 23 years, I was trashing my gut, eating gluten every day and flaring it up and having all kinds of gut problems and not realizing, thinking it was just normal. Only by chance, I had a blood test because I went to Bali and thought I had caught some parasite. Turns out my celiac disease was getting worse. And then that's led to a whole massive life change. And now I've got to really nurse this, because if I don't, I can develop arthritis, I can develop Crohn's, colitis, hypothyroidism, even bowel cancer from inflammation over decades. So really important to not sleep on blood work. If you're afraid of needles like I am, just lay down on the bed, put a podcast in and stare at your phone while they stab you for 20 seconds and it's all over. Body weight scales, really important. And one that's worked really well for myself and clients is the Renpho scale on Amazon, which is like 30, $40. What's cool about it is you can just step on it and it syncs to your phone and sends a bunch of other data. So it'll show you approximately what your body fat is, approximately what your muscle mass is, obviously your body weight, body water, and your metabolic age. So it's really cool to see, like, statistically what your metabolic age is. Often it's starts off older for the guys I work with. And as we drop the body fat and build more muscle, that metabolic age drops and we can get it actually below what their chronological age is. But that's just like data points. It's also important to look at body measurements too, because initially it's hard to see the changes because we see ourselves every day. And that's where girth measurements with a tape is really important, to seeing how much is the waist reducing, your thighs and your arms and your chest. And there comes a point where the measurements actually flip. So you'll pretty much lose on everything. And then you'll start, if you're training effectively and gaining muscle, they start to increase. And that's when you're building muscle, because if you're getting leaner and your arms and thighs are getting bigger, but you're getting leaner, it can't not be muscle because our bones don't get bigger. And if we're losing fat, then we can't be gaining it at the same time in our legs or our arms. Therefore, if our limbs are increasing, we know for sure we're building muscle. And same thing around the chest. How you know you're building chest and back muscle is because your pecs and your lats are getting bigger while your waist is shrinking. So really important metrics to look at. And I would also say, sorry, I keep clicking accidentally. I would also say a DEXA scan is probably like the pinnacle of body composition analysis. What it is, it's a bed that you lay on, scans your whole body, takes like 5 minutes, and it gives you this in-depth report that shows like your skeleton, where all your fat mass is, visceral fat, how much muscle, whether you have more muscle on your left side or your right side, so you can see if there's any imbalances that you want to factor into your training program. And it helps you kind of reinforce where your metabolic baseline is. So you're like your BMR. And I would say do this once every 3 months, so you can go back and compare what's changed and then like set new goals and targets. And it's this really cool thing to do. Like it's a snapshot in time of your body composition. And I've found for a lot of my clients, it was motivating. Like when they saw, like for example, with James Schramko, like he was not a big dude, but he was carrying a bit of kind of fluff everywhere. And he wasn't like really pumped to do much about it until he got the DEXA scan done. He saw he had 27 kilos of fat. That like gave him a kick up the ass to go and lose 10 of it and get into training. He does like strength training twice a week. He's gained about 4 or 5 kilos of muscle, dropped over 10 kilos of fat. Now his like entire body shape has changed. All because he got the DEXA scan, because I like kept poking at him to do it. And ultimately photos is going to be your best guide. So picking a blank wall, taking photos and comparing those photos over time. And if there was one thing long-term, like once you've achieved your goals, you've built the habits, you don't have to track everything forever. Like the only thing I look at now is a DEXA scan, like maybe a couple of times a year, and photos. And what I'm looking at is the definition around the abs. So typically the lower abs, if I can see a line on the lowest ab, then I know, okay, I'm happy. If I can't see a line, I know I've gained body fat. So I don't really jump on the scale much anymore. I don't really care too much. I just look in the mirror and go, am I getting leaner or am I gaining fat? And how I know is the line on the bottom ab. It can be anywhere. It can be like your obliques or your top abs. If you use a visual guide, it works well, but you kind of need to go through the trenches. Like I had to do all this, all my clients do all the data first to build the habits, to build the lifestyle, and essentially you're recreating your identity so that you can then just rely on photos and how you feel and how you look and how your clothes fit versus obsessing over the data, kind of step-by-step nature. And if you're looking to implement these pillars step by step to start shedding body fat this week, I can walk you through this in my Get Ripped report, which you can download in the description below this video. And after you do that, go watch this video right here where I show you the 4 ways to reverse metabolic decline over 30.